Thanks a lot, Connor. शास्त्रार्थ की परंपरा हमारे यहाँ बड़ी प्राचीन है. The entire tradition of शास्त्रार्थ. Someone used to propose something and then another set of rishis and another set of intellectual people used to come and add on top of it, demolish the constructs or really bring about a new paradigms which really illumine the entire Vidwat Sabha. So in this Vidwat Sabha, the first Shastrarth, the first session, the first panel, the deliberation, can technology act as a trailblazer or an enabler for accentuating all-round excellence for all the hinsak items, all the inefficiencies which we have got? Can technology really become the Arihant, the vanquisher of enemies of inadequacies, inefficiencies and inconsistencies? We have a very, very eminent panel today. We have got doyens in their own spaces and people who are the movers and shakers of the entire narrative in this space from various quarters. First and the foremost, I would like to welcome a very, very eminent guest this evening, Shri N.K. Goyal, who is the Chairman Emeritus with the Telecom Equipment Manufacturers Association of India. Sir, please. We will all listen to Mr. Goyal and the kind of energy and the kind of perspectives he unravels and unleashes. He is someone who moves and shakes the entire telecom industry in this country, and his myriad number of initiatives are really worth interacting with. We also have with us Dr. M. Moni, who led the largest IT organization, the government organization of the country, the National Informatics Center, a visionary who has dedicated his entire IT career to the agri-informatics is his area of specialization. And Dr. Moni is a doer. When he became the DG NIC, the very first day he just called us, Raghav, now is the time to join up the Indian campuses for the eGov campus program. Just link them up and let's unravel the projects. Whatever government is doing, let's do it across. Sir had a very short tenure, but the things are moving forward. We also have with us a very, very eminent professor who we at times say that, sir, you don't go to home or what. So he's someone who is single-mindedly powering the entire IT at the big Delhi University. Professor Sanjeev Singh, let's give him a big acclamation. He heads the Institute of Informatics Center at Delhi University South Campus, someone who is a real big-time votary of open software. So something which will be really interesting in this panel, and what his open software really cannot do, what an enterprise-grade software really, the power it provides across. We also have with us another very eminent personality with us, the Chief Operating Officer of the National Skills Development Council, Mr. Atul Bhatnagar. He's someone whose task is probably the toughest in this time when the national mandate is to skill the large youth population of this country. So we will be really getting some real insightful perspectives from Mr. Bhatnagar this evening, and to really give a global perspective to this entire Shastrarth which Connor has really unleashed this forum into. I would invite Mr. Jim Milton again to join us on this panel to moderate, to take conversations forward. So it's really tough to moderate a session of this eminence and with such vast learning, but then Hamare Braj mein, I come from the land of Mathura, so there we have the tradition that a 7-year-old Krishna was also given a chance to talk to 70-year-old Nand Babas, and he was someone who was an iconoclastic when he said that don't worship Indra and come and worship Giri Govardhan. So we have that tradition. So as a very, very youngster in front of these eminent galaxy of personalities, I would be taking I would be daring to just pose questions to such a galaxy of panelists out here this evening, because time is short and we really want to bring about the Nishkarsh, the real Sattva from this deliberation this evening. Mr. Milton gave a very great introduction about how he sees this was more from a company's perspective, more from a campus management corps perspective. But having someone who has studied in some of the great universities of the United States and who is really, even 8 months are a great enough time, and he really has seen the mechanizations of these great universities across the globe. So I would like to pose the first question to Mr. Milton. Like, what are the key global trends he is actually witnessing and how being an outsider, how being someone who is really witnessing the Indian higher education market, Indian higher education industry, what roadmap would you like to suggest to the entire Indian higher education space?
That's a very onerous task that you provided me with, but I'll maybe open it up for further discussion. Can you hear me okay, by the way? Is this working? It is working? Now it is okay. I'll get closer to it. So I don't want to be repetitive with what Connor talked about around the Superstore too much, but I want to kind of make some observations. I've probably visited now 45 institutions in the United States, a number of institutions in India and other places in the world. And I've seen a lot of trends, and one I just want to spend just a moment, if I could, on. And I think technology, as I think Raj indicated, can be an enabler to resolving many of the challenges that I think we've talked about already and we will talk about. But one that I want to talk about is putting the student at the center of the mission's objective. And I know, I'm sure institutions here have that in their mandate. I see in the United States, for example, long storied elite institutions that have been around since 1880 or 1899, who frequently, in many conversations, when I talk about their constituent, that term constituent, they're talking about their faculty. And aren't necessarily yet at a stage where they're talking about the student. I think you couple the expectations of the student now to have education on demand. And by the way, just in case you get the feeling, we're not necessarily espousing that everything moved to an online world. In fact, I think we've seen the pendulum shift in many institutions, especially in the United States, that have moved to a purely online delivery model, actually move back to what I would call a hybrid delivery model, where they have a combination of online and on campus. But that's certainly one trend, is to move the student to the center, and that's where tools provided by ourselves and others, like the constituent relationship management, I think can really help with the institution. The second, which we see a little less of, and I think when we get into the report information, efficiency of the institution, I don't think rose to the top, certainly the top 5. But I will challenge you that, especially as costs rise in a nation like India, and labor costs increase as a result, that efficiency will take on more importance. And we see that certainly in places around the world, the U.S. in particular. I want to just give you one data point that I found fascinating. I was out at Vanderbilt University, and some of you have probably heard of Vanderbilt, a very prestigious university. Not very large in terms of student population. They only have around 12,000 students, but very prestigious. And they do a lot of research at that institution as well. They're one of the top research institutes. They had a consultant come in and do a study of their organization, their institution, and they determined, and I hope it's not quite this bad in India, but they determined that in terms of regulatory compliance, they were spending $150 million a year. Just think about that number for a minute. It's $11,000 per student. 11,000. And again, I'm sure it's not quite that large in India, but by the way, some of their, as many of your institutes are doing research, and as you increase the amount of research that you're doing, a lot of their administrative overhead in regulatory compliance was around the management of grants. In fact, one of the data points that they shared with me is that each researcher at their institute spends on average 32% of their time essentially doing regulatory compliance types of activities. And by the way, just to put it into context, in the United States, the total amount of federal money coming from the federal government, never mind other sources like employers, the amount of federal money that goes towards research in the institutions is $30 billion. So if you do the math and assume other institutions are roughly 32% inefficient because of the regulatory compliance overhead, by my math, that's roughly $10 billion of waste. And that's not going to go to zero. Obviously, there's certain compliance that is, I think, necessary in an institution. But there is, so I want to challenge you to think about inefficiencies broadly, not just in the classical sense of, how many people do I have having to do administrative functions, but also the productivity of your faculty and what tools, and many tools, by the way, we're going to talk about, I'm sure, are not ones necessarily provided by campus management. There are lots of different learning management systems, although we do have one ourselves. There's lots of different technology in the classroom. I know a lot of you are embracing to think about. So I just wanted to bring a little bit of a different dimension to the discussion in terms of some of the trends that we see around the world, and I think some of the trends that you're going to see as time goes along. So.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Minton. I would now like to bring in Professor Sanjeev Singh. Sir has been really singularly handling the entire technological deployment process at the Delhi University, right from the admissions to a whole range of, every time we visit his great center, we find a new initiative and a mind-boggling initiative, an ant coming across and a lot of other stuffs coming across. So my question to you is, are the Indian institutions ready for this massive transformation, which probably Connor has really reflected, the superstorm? Are we really ready to take on the superstorm in the higher education system, which is really facing us all across?
I think one thing is quite clear that all of us, we've started feeling the heat, so we need to gear up, and most of the institutions, they are heading towards doing something, and some kind of productivity is coming out of it. So yeah. So taking forward, there have been many initiatives, in higher education in terms of the technology integration, as introductory remarks, very well, comprehend all those, that how we can identify technology. Is there any thumb rule to identify technology or embrace technology? There is no such rule, right? And but my experience that we have been, burnt our finger many a times where, 10 years back, with the so-called concept of ERP, trying to deploy, but we miserably failed. And we did it a couple of times, but we never got, succeeded. But I don't know why we fail to integrate technology in our processes, whether the processes are too cumbersome to be incorporated into the technology framework, or vice versa. So either the flexibility is required within the technology, or the processes are to be changed so that the technology can be incorporated, and it's debate whether we are working towards managing the teaching and learning, the future of today's teaching of learning, or teaching and learning of the future, right? So it's an internal debate we have been doing all the time. So if it is we're talking about the future, then what technology, what framework? Then we have been hearing a lot of technological framework, whether it's the cloud or the SaaS, or today I think one beautiful term I heard, that the CAS, the course as a service, is a fantastic term. So I think this is going to grow, and also I've been hearing that the 360-degree kind of a concept where you can monitor the student's activity, and you can make a fantastic analysis of the students, how the life is happening. But on the other side, my observation is you are giving too much freedom to the students, right? So we are calling the degree of freedom, right? On the other side, where is the degree of freedom for the faculty to teach, right? So are we taking care of that degree of freedom? So I think there's a mismatch. I may be wrong, but these are the deliberations we have been doing, and we are talking and discussing on the different forums. So as far as the integration of new frameworks, new technology to make education more productive, there are certain observations where can we completely transform, right? And the question is, how much time is going to take? It depends on the diversity, reality within the institutions and the universities we embrace, and I think we enjoy the diversity across India. So there is no single solution can make or bring in the change what we are. Every institution is looking forward, right? And also how to work around the pedagogy, right? And each one of us in this room, I think we still remember who taught us in the school days. why do we remember that particular teacher? Each one of us, we are still remembering one particular teacher of any subject, right? And that is the pedagogy. So how do we integrate those kind of concepts in today's transformation as we are committed to, bring in the transform with the help of technology or maybe other components of the technology world. So I think is a very interesting area where we have been doing a lot of research work and teaching and learning technologies, and new models are evolving, and it's really pleasing to see different models. There are different outcomes. There are different the power or the capacity to engage students or the learner. But I think we need to also look at the educator, how we need to engage educator within the framework. So it's a single point of delivery to the thousands of students. The students are getting benefited, but I think there is something, as I think Mr. Raj has rightly pointed out, we have tons of content, right? But are we looking at the aggregation of that or the categorization of that to make it more, more available to the student what he's looking for in terms of the freedom to learn, and also from whom he would like to learn, right? So there is no issue of the content, but the aggregation and categorization and what kind of the components or to cater to the diversity of the students and all the fraternity, teaching and learning fraternity in India, how to cater to that kind of requirement. So there's some of the observation. We'll move on to other discussions.
I think being someone who has really deployed technology from the first principles and hands-on technological buff, I think very meaningful points Professor Sanjeev Singh has raised. I would now move on to Mr. Atul Bhatnagar, who has been really given a larger mandate of skilling such a wide amount of India's youth. Our basic query the panel and the audience would like to know, sir, as to how you are leveraging the power of technology. Is technology working as a trailblazer or an enabler for you, and in what terms?
Thank you for the question. Just to give the Indian landscape for skilling, we feel that there are going to be 500 million people to be skilled by 2022. I'm from National Skill Development Corporation, and our goal is to do 150 million people by 2022. And this is across 20 growth sectors. So obviously, to reach out to such a large population, technology is required as an enabler. Now, amongst the other things that we are doing, we are first trying to create a database, a repository of skills that India would have or would need in future. And in order to do that, we created something called a concept of a skill cloud. Now, what does the skill cloud have in it? One is the supply of skills, and that's where SDMS, or Skill Development Management System, comes in. That's being done by Talisman, and that's a very good product that we've come to. We have developed, in fact, with them at all the times. And then we have to have a demand for skills, so that becomes what you call the labor management information system. And the third is basically an information system in itself to provide knowledge and theory and access, which is called the Skillpedia. Skillpedia, very much like Wikipedia. So what is skill, what is standards, what is national occupation standard, what is all those jargons that the skill development landscape is going to deploy. That's going to come from the Skillpedia. Now the interplay of these three systems is what we feel is going to provide, as Jim just said, keeping the citizen at the center of it. That citizen can be you and me, or maybe have been trained or from products of higher education, or people who are yet to be educated, or just have to be skilled without being educated also. So that 150 million are those people who, and that's where again another component of technology can come in to reach out to them. Many of them don't know how to read or write. And do we have the time to be able to take them through a 10-year program of K10 or K12 kind of schedule? And have we succeeded in the past to be able to do that? So why we are doing all this is because the average age of an Indian is becoming lesser by the day. So India, the average age of an Indian will be 29 years by 2020. And Japan will be at 38, China will be, or Japan will be at 48, China will be at 38, EU will be around 45. So while the world is aging, India is becoming younger. And we've got a population which doesn't know, or rather very large significant population which doesn't know how to read or write. But they know how to communicate, they know how to speak. And India, well, whichever percentage you take of the population, there's a huge number to work with. So I'm not saying this is something that we have to work towards and everybody. So higher education has to, I mean, first of all, it's a marketing exercise to do a segmentation analysis where the higher education is placed and where, let's say, the people who want to get skilled without being educated and people with education and skill and all the kind of combinations we have to make. Now, that's where we need to kind of reach out to this, whether it's 150 or 500 million people who are working with their own preferences and tastes and have their own, I mean, they're coming from 29 different states. So India is also a United Nations of 29 countries, so that's where we have to make it specific to them. Second, they may or may not have access to websites. So I'm not a very big fan of websites and internet learning alone because I will not be able to access them. If there are 900 million mobile users and there are only 200 million internet users, my target population coming from the difference between the two. So for them, how do I reach? So that is where the technology will again come into play. How do I reach the person through mobile phone? How do I reach the person through his or her language of communication? Because the person may not be able to read the written word. And yet, the person has to be skilled in some shape or form, skilled with an outcome. The outcome can be either wage employment or a self-employment. Be it a farmer itself. If the farmer gets to know the right choice of seed, the right way to analyze the soil, the way to when to sow, when to reap, gets information on the weather patterns, and a little bit of finance to be able to access the nearest mandi, the productivity of a farmer doubles. So suddenly from being a farmer, he becomes an entrepreneur. How do we make that happen? So that's the kind of challenge where technology can play a very big role. And we feel that skill development leading to an outcome where this outcome is going to be decided by the industry. So that's the big shift that we're trying to create between academia and industry. I'm a product of higher education, so I don't want to deride that, but I just want to ensure that what is needed is what these people, and they're coming from the, so the industry is kind of deciding what are the competencies they want. What are the competencies against the job role that they want? And how do we achieve those competencies? Because they are the ones who are deciding what the competencies are. They are doing the assessment criteria. So standards you decide. I'm talking about the industry as a whole. They decide the standards, they decide the competency, they decide the assessment criteria. So why should a person not be employable? Till now it was like, academia does whatever it wants to do, and then 75% of graduates are not employable because they don't have specific employable skills. So we've turned the whole thing around. And we set these sector skill councils which decide for their sector what is required of them. So in healthcare, what does a ward boy need to know? What does a diabetes educator need to know? And diabetes educator needn't be from biology, needn't know has to come from a medicine background or something. No. Person can be a sociology student also, why not? Can be has to have a counseling background and skills related to diabetes. Now 1 in 3 in India is diabetes affected person. See the amount of jobs that can be created by being a diabetes educated itself. So these are case in points that I'm just trying to bring out for more thinking on how we can align technology, bridge the gap between education and skill development, break the bigger courses into smaller courses, and the sigma of small courses actually is education. But each course in itself becomes a capsule itself. I take my own example. I was in IIT Kanpur for 5 years, and That time the BTech degree was 5 years. But in those 5 years there was suspense. Okay, look, if I hadn't completed those 5 years, I would have been left with a class 12 degree, and like being anybody else on the road. But at the end of 5 years only I get a degree, but in my third year I was having all kind of trouble with my family emergencies, etc. So there was a good there was a good chance I could have dropped out, not for capability, but circumstances. But suppose if I were to break it in my course first, say, at the end of first year I become a machinist, second year I become a CNC machinist, third year I become a machine designer, fourth year I become a robotics engineer, and the fifth year I get my mechanical engineering degree. Even at the end of third year, if I come out saying that I am a machine designer, a lot of value for the industry. Even in the first year, if I break up the machinist course, first 3 months I become a lathe operator, next 3 months I become a grinder, saw miller. So summation of these courses can be a BTech degree. And we have to now see how people, people can drop out of 3 months, not a problem. But they have something, what we call is hunar hai to qadar hai, skilling has respect. That is what we need to propagate. So there will be people who will complete the 5 years, there will be people who do the first 3 months, and there will be people in between. There will be people who leave the education, come back, dabble around. Who says you have to do graduation first and then start working? Right? Learn a skill, learn more, earn more. And by the way, do your graduation on the side. No, learning should never stop. That's the idea. But it shouldn't be that you do all the graduation bit, everything, and then you're left without a job, you're out of cash, you get depressed, you become a courier boy and pizza delivery boys and whatever, and you actually get underemployed. And that's what this country is facing right now. There are jobs without skills and there are skills without jobs. And that mismatch has to be brought to a head somewhere and matched off. And I think that's where technology can come as a big enabler.
I think at this point I would like to bring in Professor Sanjeev Singh, because he was really privy to create a massive technological module for the 4-year integrated program at Delhi University, where they had first year, second year, and they had a whole lot of deliberation. It was unceremonially dumped because of certain reasons. But sir would like to bring in his experience, what Mr. Bhatnagar has talked about, the first year of dropping in, second year, the flexible delivery model, which is probably Connor also said in his presentation out there. So.
Yeah, I think there was, again the curriculum development and how any institution would be working on, designing their own curriculum. So accepting and rejecting, that's a different issue. But I think it's a great, learning and values coming from Mr. Bhatnagar that there is a mismatch of, the skills for job or jobs without skills. So it is a very well thought, statement. And all the institutions, we are struggling with that, whether we need to improvise and redefine the curriculum to cope up with the challenges of the, today's requirement for the youth. On the other side, when we change the curriculum, then we have to also deal with the masses, right? We have to deal with the volume. So how to disseminate those skill sets and in terms of the content to the students or the deserving candidates. So I think we work a lot in terms of working with the technologies to make it happen, and we succeeded. And we devised our own mechanism with a different piece of technologies and in-house development. So again, the question is how to take it forward, right? Is there any standard defined? Whether as he rightly pointed out, everything is, all the standards and everything is defined by the industry, and the same industry is rejecting the students that are coming out from the educational institutions, right? So how to bring in those standards within the curriculum so that they start accepting those, right? And we bridge that gap, right? And also to minimize and to cut out that time period which a student is completing the formal degree and again going to acquire those credits so that he is recognized as a skilled person in the real world. So I think this is the point where we need to deliberate and work out the effective model where, the institutions and the industries we work together. And I think it's the right time to do that. And I'm pretty sure, I'm very hopeful that some models have been made, and I think we are waiting to implement them within the institution.
Thanks a lot, sir. Now, sir, I will come to the questions just once we have done the opening remarks of all the panelists out there. I would now like to bring in Dr. Moni, who has really seen the entire workings of the biggest IT organization in this country. NIC is the IT backbone provider for the entire government of India, the whole large amount of departments across, and even the state governments and anything which goes over there. So my question specifically to you is that in this era of automated record management era, automated workflows, and a whole lot of things really getting into an IT space where the whole lot of governance and compliances is really taking a different shape. Even the IT returns, even in the e-governance space, you are seeing a lot of automation. So in the context of higher education, what is your perception and opinion that are we really in control, or are we just in charge at our higher education institutions?
Okay, thank you, Raghav. I prepared a presentation, but I will speak it out. I would like to emphasize around 4 points. I'm very happy that the survey has brought out an important point that related to the efficiency of the faculty. That is about 85%, to be improved upon. We have got 4 parameters. One is the student, another is the faculty, another is about 30,000 colleges. Fourth parameter is about 22 lakhs. And most of the colleges are in the rural area. As the person who gave the vision document for 18 government when Mr. Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister, that is called the district program in 28 sectors, which was discussed in the district collectors conference in 87-88, which has resulted in, I am also alive and today IT in India. In 95, after visiting so many districts in the country, more than 350 districts, I thought that IT in agriculture is more important because India is an agrarian country. And introduced in 95, and many of the IT industries are not ready to even to look into IT in government as well as IT in agriculture. What we put that blueprint in IT in agriculture is the e-governance program in India till today, and which many of the countries abroad also is now looking towards a solution from India. So, what is the problem? That is also today I have seen that there is an aim is that creating a synergized and result-oriented higher education environment. 25,000 agriculture graduates comes out every year from about 452 agriculture colleges. 80% of them are jobless. And remaining people go as an officer in the bank, public sector. But today, the agriculture extension system is in a very shabby manner. It is destabilized. And how to bring back at least to the 25,000 graduates who come out every year back to pavilion. So it made me that, okay, fine, you have worked in the government, you have seen the entire country, and what to do that. That's what has resulted me after retirement to create a discipline called Agriculture Informatics, a Center for Agriculture Informatics and E-Governance Research Studies in a private university called Soviet University, which has launched MTech in Agriculture Informatics program. Basically, on the same concept of if you do 6 months first semester, you will get a certificate, diploma. And if you do the first year, it is postgraduate. And if you complete the 3rd semester and 4th semester, you will get MTech programs there. And this is completely a synergized program of how to bring in not only agriculture, non-agriculture students to bring in for agricultural, management. Today, it's a way I have seen it that about 135 million farming community is not having any technology, especially even in IT. Even if you see weather forecast, he said that cloud, somebody was telling it. You know what is the impact if 100% farmer gets weather information well in advance? It will result in 115,000 crores economic impact. 115,000 crores. And where have we achieved? What is this as technology universities? When the Britishers were there, 150 years back, an agricultural met weather station group was formed in IMD, but still now we are not even able to go for a weather prediction, Met advisory services to each small farmers. He needs that when he have a crop, he needs the crop during the crop cycle, weather predictions, weather related things that. We are not able to do that. So here if the synergy takes place, our education and our research and the farmer means here is a private industry and the student and the research programs. This is one example which I would like to put it. That is the reason why that program has been launched. Second one is that when I was the DG NIC, he was mentioned it that I had a meeting with Dr. Sampithoda. Now I have seen it that there are about 4,500 engineering colleges, and NASCOM report said that only 15% of the people are employable, and 50% of the people, if they are skilled, they can be employed. What will happen to the 45% of the students for whom the parents invest and the private people, they invested money in the rural area where government didn't want to go over there. Even the government is not even interested to part the education cess which they collect from the income taxpayers. They are not interested even to the private institution which also brings out good students. So all students are, these are Indian students. Why only that students who come from IITs and NITs and UGC, aided colleges only should be given all government contributions then? So this, I thought that I should bring it out, to the forum. So I told Dr. Sampithoda that you have suggested 1,500, universities has to be brought out. What will happen to this? And today when a student joins his course, he doesn't have a basket of problems to choose. That he will work on the problem for the next 4 years along with the faculty, so that by the time he finishes his course, he is an engineer, not a graduate. That is not there. So why can't we do it? So that resulted in, then Dr. Sampithoda told that, Moni, we know about you. Why don't you start this one? I told him, I'm returning on May 31st. No, you please do that. We'll be back with you. Then I called Mr. Raghav, gentlemen, you are doing an engineering watch. Even though my target is 4,500 engineering colleges who teach computer science and 18,000 non-engineering colleges who teach MCA programs to be covered. Because this is, we know that Digital India program is going to come in 2013, right? And how to do about it. And within 1 month, he was able to organize a conference on the UN Civil Services Day that I also gave the title that Engineering eGov Research Program in every college, that if a research incubator is established and the faculty member and the student are made to work on the research incubator programs, and when he comes out, what he said is that first 3rd year designer, 4th year, robotics, and then 5th year mechanic, naturally he will come out, because today our youth wants to learn, wants to work. No student wants to have any freebie from government. If you travel throughout the length and breadth of rural areas, they want job. He said only stop. Tsunami is going to take place. What India has already faced in 2004, still the rehabilitation in many parts of the country didn't complete so far. So the tsunami is going to take place within the youth unless this is one program. Then we thought that fine, at least to start with this 4,500 engineering colleges and 18,000 non-engineering colleges, we don't have a national center for engineering, e-governance, research, and developing innovative solutions. And that is the one that in the PPP model, so that this body will be in a position to interact with all the colleges. Forget about IITs, forget about NITs, forget about the central universities and so on and so forth, other private sector institute, and let us try to do that. Once upon a time when we were doing it, the private companies were ready to give probationary training. But today, you can't expect from the private industries to spend on our students because they are working on, very reduced margin. So we have to find a space to how to give this training on the job, when the student is in the campus then. So this is one which we would like to do it under the, PPP model. I'll be very happy. This is going to be registered as a society, and this will be done. Third is that we don't have a good, the textbooks, at least in IT, written by Indian authors. This is when I was the Deputy Director General E-Governance Standards. We proposed that at least we should have 100 titles written by Indian authors, Indian professors in 22 languages. Because this has made me, because when I was interacting with a student from Bihar, he was an expert on that technology. And he was talking in Hindi and so on and so forth. I asked him that, gentleman, how did you learn and how did you become expert and so on and so forth? Sir, the thing is that I have to go through two processes. And there is no books available, so I went for an English language course first. And then many of the terminology was not told. So the thing is that first I will translate into English, understand it, then get back to my own, mother tongue and try to do that. Is it happening in Japan? Is it happening in France? Is it happening in other European countries? Why only it is happening in the 29 countries which he said that is in India? So this is a very big thing, that if we have to create a research interest among the students, research interest among the faculties, and research interest in the universities, the textbooks written by Indian authors are more important. Do you mean to say that they cannot write it? I asked many of the professors because I'm from IIT Chennai, 76, 78 MTech back, they said that they don't find time. I was surprised and shocked. When they have got all the time to understand, to go and attend all conferences in abroad and India, they cannot sit and write textbooks based on their experiences. And I should be wrong. And these are the four areas where I strongly feel that if we have a textbook of our own, based on our own experience, another one is to be available in 22 languages. And third is that there has to be a basket full of problems. And where the first day when each institution give a diary book, when a student join, prospectus book, you give a problem. Let him also choose it. Let him study theory and let him also study this one. And fourth one is that technology is available, whether you like it or not, you will use it. But when Professor Sanjay Singh, when he invited me to address to the students, what is the program? Inspire. That's Inspire. Inspire 1. I asked many of the students that, how many cell phones you have? Many say that 2, 3 and so on and so forth. I told him, you are a computer science student. Can you throw this mobile phone on the ground and count how many number of components it has got? And what is its interfaces? Have you studied in your coursework for the last 4 years? They said no. This I related to what Professor Nath said when he was the director IIT, Mumbai. When Dr. Manmohan Singh, when he was the Deputy Chairman Planning Commission, in 1986, he called for all 5 IIT directors conference one-day meeting. Work out, long-range research problems. Finance is not the criteria. And that time National Informatics Center was attached with the Planning Commission. We have been asked to attend that meeting. Throughout the meeting, Dr. Manmohan Singh inaugurated it. Then Dr. Raja Challaiah, Member Planning Commission, took over the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, what has come out was that Professor Nath said that we never allowed our student to soil their hand to build a house. Even in IITs. He said that it is set up as an Indian Institute of Technology, it has become Indian Institute of Engineering. We have never allowed our students. We also produce only certificate than any other universities. So it's a simple example. When the rain stops, the kids, they will run out of the house, they will go to the street, they put the wet sand on their own feet and try to hold the house. Other kids will come and, demolish it. So he said that very nicely, until we, soil the hand, we allow the students to soil the hand, how we will mold the house. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. So Dr. Moni, with his characteristic large-scale vision he has given us on this forum, I would now request Mr. N.K. Goyal to give up his remarks on the topic as to how technology can really become a trailblazer and enabler for accentuating all-round excellence in a higher education system.
As being the last man, I have the luxury to be out of box. And I also know all of you are tired.
Out of box, you have to bring it out in box.
And also, all of you are so tired by now. So let me just take 2-3 minutes with you very briefly. I have to rush somewhere. It's very difficult to say something in the presence of Jim, Moniji, Atulji, Sanjeevji here, and all of you here. I find so many academicians, so many vice chancellor, directors, Samaj here, Mona is sitting there, lots of people are here. I have been meeting them occasionally in the UP and here in the Always. So let me say at the outset that I am not the type of person you would have expected to be here because I am not an academician. Even though I am a professor in Gujarat Technical University for MBA, but not that way. Sharing with you 3 things really out of box. One about result oriented, somebody talked. About inefficiency, somebody talked. About technology, somebody talked. Come to the result oriented. I am going to leave you with so many questions which you can ponder on, go on thinking and share with others and also with me if you want to. What is education? What is excellence? Is obtaining a degree an educated man? Is obtaining a certificate an excellent man? Then what about Tulsi, or Valmiki, or Steve Jobs, or Bill Gates, who were school dropouts, but they're not educated? That's what is the question. The question?
I would like to welcome Professor R.K. Khandal, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Uttar Pradesh Technical University, which happens to be the largest technological university in Asia. Sir, we welcome you, sir.
I'm happy that he joined Professor Khandal because for me he is mentor, guide, philosopher, an inspiration for me. What I'm sharing is most of the things I have learned from him and listened from him. So I was saying, is the degree enough a proof for education? Do we need a curriculum? Has not the time has come that we should think of why should we have exams? The exams are really required. That is the one thing. And then we all know, as was said by somebody here, that 95% of funding from the federal government goes to the IIT, IIMs also, whereas 90% of the students are studying in the state government colleges and private colleges. So how we can continue for this? Second part was inefficiency, incompetency. Are we really inefficient? Are we really incompetent? Why should everybody talk of Harvard and Cambridge also? Is it enough that we have one Harvard in the world? Are we not interested to teach our ordinary person on the road? Are we not interested to teach a person who secured only 40% or 30% or 50%? And the state technical university like UPTU here, which is largest in India, with more than 1,500 colleges, taking in at the ratio marks of 30, 40, 50% or so, and out the students having 70, 80 or so. Are we not needing them? Do we don't need them? So then why we talk of inefficiency? Why at all? Why you talk of jobs? Is getting degree only for jobs? It is a fact there are so many students who doesn't want a job. In fact, if I can share, me and Khandal Sahab have been discussing a very unusual idea, a university or a college with no exams and no jobs for the ERP. Basically, I come from telecom mobile sector, education, has been added to that. We usually say that technology is developed by somebody sitting somewhere in an air-conditioned room and then thrusted upon the world and marketed to all of us. Now, ERP we have been hearing for so many years. I'm happy that Sanjeev from IIT said that they could not get a product for this. I was in Lucknow last time and we discussed with Khandar Sahab and other. There was a conference around 80 vice chancellors were there. All of them said, we don't have any ERP solution as of now for this. So where do we go? Technology fine to be used, fine to be set. But where is the real technology coming up and do we need that? I just want to add something to Mr. Atul from NSDC. He rightly pointed out that we need skills and the various phases. I'm sure you already know that you have approved curriculum called National Skill Qualification Framework from level 1 to level 7, which you know. That provides you the flexibility of skills at different levels and diversity. With this, I will say thank you very much, and I have to leave for some meetings, so I will need excuse for that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. We really miss your gracious presence, but I would now leave the forum open for asking or commenting upon what all has been deliberated on this August panel. A lot of thoughts and a lot of questions have been put across. So I would lay the forum open for quick comments and suggestions. Sir, please. Yeah. Pardon? So there itself, the mic is there. You can just press. Yeah, please.
Really, I was enjoying the talks from so much high-profile persons in the dais. I think that I should supplement something with the tune of this discussion. We are talking about the technology, we are talking about the quality. But one thing, as rightly pointed out, that India could be thought of a nation with country of 29 nations. The most important factor which comes to mind is the heterogeneity in the entire system. Talking right from the basic education to higher education, if you consider the students' quality, faculty quality, infrastructure quality, there is a lot of heterogeneity. Now, the technology should be such to accept all the heterogeneity. That is the most important challenge for me. Otherwise, a graduate who takes education in some corner of Chennai, when is posted in Noida or somewhere, may face some problem because the technology may not be suitable for that. So, instead of talking for the technology automatically, see, mobile phone, when it comes to our house, we learn our children gets educated. The technology is always accepted by people. Unless it is accepted, there will be no market. Because there is a market, so people are accustomed with that technology. So there is no question on that of technology. The quality of the person, that is most important. Second point I like to mention, the way we have for school teachers BA degree to improve the teaching quality. There is nothing in engineering or higher education. Can we have that BA engineering, something like that? So that those who are get trained through the course of study during 4 years or plus 2 years in MTech, they are not properly backed because of the quality of teaching.
Maybe the first question can be taken by Professor Sanjeev Singh. Sir, okay. The first question for and I will also invite Mr. Raj Mrityunjay to just join in for this question answer session. It's going to be exciting out here. In the Indian question. And the second question, I would probably pass it on to Professor Khandal as to the 2-year BA program or whatever.
And another point is
Sir,
that
just let's answer this because we will just keep the for rolling here.
I think so. The first observation you made on the heterogeneity and the technology and all that. So first of all, I mean, all of us, we always struggle in acquiring and adopting any kind of framework, and somehow we don't do enough homework of what we are looking for. We start with the concept of managing the institution. Then we realized that no, we were supposed to manage the students. Then next we realized, no, are we supposed to manage the learning of those students or to manage the students? then is going on, right? So this is an endless process, and we are evolving with all those technology. We are learning with all those technologies about all can be offered by different frameworks. So the heterogeneity, localization, and all these things is a matter of time, and I think the technology again will help us in localizing different kind of aspects of whether it's a content or any other thing. So the technology has to be robust. That's fine. Everybody agrees to it. But again, the struggle with whether the technology should be flexible enough to cope up with the rigidness of the institutional framework, or the vice versa. So that's a debate. I think I think very soon we are going to take with this, and the technology will be more flexible and can be adopted in any kind of frameworks. I think it's not a big problem. Many technologies are there. So we need to just wait, or maybe they are available. I'm not aware of.
Maybe Raj would like to build upon on this response.
Yeah, thank you. So I think it was a very, very well thought through question. I would answer it this way. I don't think you should ask an industry and say, what technology do you have to solve my problem? I think you should say, here is my problem. What technology do you have to solve it? That's a fundamental question, right? And I think when you put that priority list in front of the right people, unfortunately, the word ERP is very broad and convoluted. Everybody who can use an ERP, because at the end of the day, no one has defined this very well. It was actually a word coined by SAP. So it was not like somebody who did a big research and came up with the word ERP. SAP defined this because they wanted to define a market, right? So we don't necessarily think that ERP is your solution. We think that if you have a challenge in front of you, again, if you're a private institution, admissions is your problem. Really, kind of making sure that you're getting the right kind of students to come in. It's not just filling up the seats, but how do you get the right type of students who will actually bring the type of credibility to your institution as they come out of it. That's your problem to solve. And I can tell you there are various examples like this globally where we have engaged, others have engaged, and solved the problem. So if the problem definition is that, there are ways to actually go about solving the problem. Technology is only an enabler at the end of the day. Technology platforms should be flexible to enable you to solve your problem. Technology will not come and solve all your problems. We still have to consult, engage, enable you to solve the problem. So my suggestion and my strongest recommendation is, I think, as and when you're actually thinking about your problems, prioritize your problems and address them one at a time. And the toughest problem would take you the longest time to address. And you need to understand that there is no magic formula about this, but technology can definitely solve this problem, not for today's need, but you should fix something which is going to happen tomorrow. We should think about the 150 million problem that Mr. Bhatnagar talked about. We should talk about the scales that you have to fix for the future, not just think about today's problem when you go for fixing it.
I think quite well placed. Your second question, you were talking about BA or something of that. Maybe Professor Khandal would like to answer that.
Actually, not BA. Exactly, I was that fine-tuning. I was talking about the fine-tuning. Now it is there. It is in a scattered way by the industry according to need. Their need. Wipro, Infosys, they are having their Campus Connect program and Mission Tennis, etc. But as such, in the college institutional level, there is no uniformity in that improving the teaching quality. Because in fact, many teachers in the private institutions, they are out of compulsion. They have no choice other than the teaching profession. So they don't have that much passion for teaching. And similarly, there are students who just to get an easy job, they are coming to learn engineering.
I think we have the man for
Yes, yes. So both of that passion is not there. There is me.
Yeah. Professor Khandal.
Thank you very much, Sagarji, for inviting me, and thank you very much for such a wonderful program. And I'm really delighted to see such great people sitting in front of me. But first we should decide, you want me to answer the question or not?
No problem.
You have no objection of answer. My dear friends, I am a little different from all of this in this line and in this way of thinking about this line. In my opinion, the problem is that we think there is a problem and there is not a problem. That is the problem in my opinion. So actually there is no problem. So what are you talking? If you listen to your question that you have asked yourself, You know, many a time we speak something, but we don't listen ourselves what we have spoken. That is where the problem is. There is no problem in this country when we start talking about students of college, when we start grading students. Who are we to grade students? Tell me if a student, just now Professor Goyal was telling, exactly that's my idea. When we say a student is 45% marks, or a student who is 95% marks, but a 95% marks is not able to walk, is not able to understand your problem, he scores good. But a 45% fellow will come to your farmhouse and will correct your machines, will correct your devices, will put you in line with everybody in the world. So whom you say is better quality? I just want to share one experience. You have 2 minutes for me to speak.
Sir.
I just want to share one experience. I went to one of the top universities in the world, Technical University, Indianapolis University, which is rated amongst the top 10. And I had a detailed discussion with the president of that university. My question was very focused. Say, you have come to this level, how you have reached and what is the key story behind it, key functions behind it. He said, wow, it's very simple. I said, how it is very simple? It's very difficult for us. We don't have a university in the top 200. He said, we take best of the students, we take best of the teachers, we have best of the facilities. I said, what do you mean by best? Best is only 1 or 2% according to your parameters. What about the 98%? So they all are not entitled for this, or whom you have already said that they are not entitled for best. Take the case of India. There are 1 million students appear for the exam, and we select only 12,000, 13,000, maximum 22,000 students. What about the rest who are not able to pass the exam? You think they are stupid? No. Actually, they are better innovator than all others. So I think our system, our thought process, that there is a problem itself is wrong. We should do our job. We are trying to elaborate things which we are not supposed to. That's where the problem is. Now, simple aspect. See, in education, we do only one thing. The outcome of education is knowledge. Are we creating knowledge? Are we adding knowledge? These are the two questions. Any activity that we do in any institute, any university, should be focused around it. This in education, are we creating knowledge or are we adding knowledge? Now, who is the source of knowledge? We consider teacher is the source of knowledge. Actually, it's the students. I always put a challenge and pose a question to all my policymakers in India. The IITs must make a rule that we will never admit students who are scoring more than 75%. Because our teachers are fantastic. They have traveled abroad. They have been to best of the universities in the world for postdoc, for visiting professors, and they should teach the students who are not able to score 40% marks. So IITs in India should only admit students who are less than 50% marks scorer. And universities like UPDU should take the students who are more than 75% marks. See, we are, and I'm telling you, this is not for the purpose of getting your claps. This is for the purpose of making the point across. I was listening to Modi ji today morning, and he was giving a speech on an inauguration ceremony of 80th anniversary of Reserve Bank of India, and he spoke one sentence which really touched me. He said, we brought a scheme called Jan Dhan Yojana. And he says, when I brought this, everybody questioned. Everybody says, how can it be done? The banking is done this way, banking cannot be done that way. And he says, today we have 15 crores who are the account holders. Then the people came and said that they are only account holder, it is not working. So he said, there is a solution. We don't have to think this as a problem. I only had to tell them that anything that is given in terms of subsidy will go to their account directly. Obviously, all the 15 crore accounts became operational. So, it is up to you how you see. If you focus on elaborating a problem, then the problem will remain more and more, get magnified. If you focus on start contributing, the problem will vanish. Because, in fact, in the world, there is no problem. The only problem is that you think there is a problem. So it is a thought process. The second aspect of it, Raghavji, if you allow me to say, we just said that teachers are teachers because they had no other option. This is the biggest issue that we have to handle. Imagine when we take admissions in BTech first year, the student is told already that what all is available after BTech and what all is in the deliverables of the degree that he receives. Unfortunately today, and this is done by the developed countries more than by the developing ones, the developed countries have put a parameter, employability, placement. These are the deliverables of a student. In the deliverables, there is nowhere it is mentioned that you will become innovator, you will become more knowledgeable, you will be able to solve the problems of the society, you will be able to do things which nobody has been able to do, you will be uniquely placed, you will be a human being of different order. Nobody has these as a deliverables of education system. My dear sirs, you are the knowledgeable people. I am only submitting to you as a vice chancellor of only 2.5 years of UP Technical University, but this experience which I am sharing it with you, and the question which I am posing to you, is the one which is very hard to find an answer of. Unless we have a mindset change, unless we have a paradigm shift in our thinking process, thought process. So the fact of the matter is, the point which I am trying to bring home is, how you are visualizing it, how you are catching up the problem. आप मुझे बताइए कैसे करेंगे?
Just 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
Professor Khandelwal has said 2 points. That's my point which I already told.
I
You said
see.
that you admit, let IIT admit only 40%, the people who have taken 40%. I told you that in the whole process, remove NITs and IITs, don't bring it, let us have another, reforms for the students, for the institutions of 4,500 engineering institutions who are outside the purview of NITs and IITs. They have enough fund from the government. Now we have to find out how to get into the skill development of both teachers and the students.
Sir.
Second one also, you said it very nicely, that how to make the students innovative during the 4 years. That is the second point I think you mentioned about that.
Sir, I am telling you something different. You were very right. Thank you very much. You appreciated what I have said. What I am saying is, in your deliverables of education, we have to define that. Unfortunately, in this country of 125 crores, the policy makers are guided by those who come from the IITs and NITs. If I am a rich person coming from a rich strata, and this is what coming back to Modi ji's point of view, he said, I have grown up amongst living in the poor people. So I know what the problems of poor people is. A fellow who has come out of IIT, he cannot consider that there are people who exist who cannot enter into IIT. His thought process is like this. There are IAS officers who are already IIT graduates. They visualize things how it is done in IIT. When they have to make a policy for institutes like UPTU and other institutes, they always compare how it is done in IIT. They don't bring it into point how IIT has been a failure. I put this one.
Sir, thanks a lot. I think,
I also have a great expectation from Mr. Modi for the last so many months.
sir.
And
So I think-
the points which I have told today, I have
He's,
written to the
brought
human resources
true-
development
true.
minister
I think
in the month of July.
Sir, let me finish.
The points which
I think what process.
just one.
Sir, let me finish.
No, just 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
The points which I told in the one, I have written to the Human Resources Development Minister in the month of July 2014. I have yet to receive an acknowledgement letter from the Human Resources Development.
No problem, sir. You
Sir,
will get
It is
it.
not
Sir.
an IIT. it is a-
Yeah. Sir,
No,
sir, I would try to come in because we have to.
Yeah. You will go and yes,
एक मिनट मेरे को खत्म कर लेने दो यार, मैं
Sir.
पहले बोला था, बोल रहा
Sir,
है,
please,
नहीं, मत बोलो, नहीं तो मैं चुप कर
Sir, sir,
Now, coming to the point, what are the mistakes we are doing?
sir.
Let us see. And that's not a problem in my opinion, because I know how to get rid of it, so it's not a problem. The biggest issue before us is the policy making system. In the budget of Government of India, every year each government feels proud of declaring we are opening 5 new IITs, we are opening 10 new NITs, we are opening so many IIMs, and we are opening so many AIMS. And you know what they do? They say this IIT in Jodhpur will be mentored by IIT Delhi. Look at the availability of teachers in IITs. First of all, only 70 or 60% of the posts are filled. Number two, only 50% of the time the faculty is available for the students and for teaching. They are available for all sorts of meetings. And today in this country, if you talk to a teacher, what does he do? Any teacher, IIT, NIT, non-IIT, or UPT or any other institute. You know what he says, what are his expertise? He says he's a member of so-and-so committees, he sets question papers, he is doing this, he is doing that. He never says, I teach this. Teaching is the least thing because he gets the remuneration for each activity he does. He's a very good invigilator, he's a very good paper setter, he does the examining the copies, he becomes the dean, he manages the things, he is doing the syllabus improvement, he is doing this, he is not teaching.
Sir.
So that is the biggest issue. On the part of the government, what we are doing is we say we will open 5 IITs. So the state in which maximum BJP seats are there, we will open 1 IIT.
So
We'll get the mark.
I think Connor would like to really sit with you and give his on-demand presentation. Probably he has covered the core plea what Professor Khandale has raised.
85% of engineers are produced from places which are not IIT and NIT.
Sir.
And these engineers, I deal and I am in touch with them day in, day out. I am known to 500,000 families in UP, which that means multiplied by 5 people per family comes to 25 lakhs. Every year for last 2.5 years that becomes almost about, you can imagine 75 lakhs.
Exactly,
Close
sir.
to. So you can understand how much impact we have. So
Sir, I think Professor Khandale has really raised the real Achilles heels of the India's higher education system problem. We have just 100 of the IITs and IITs and other premier institutions, a 300 deck of private and deemed universities, and the bulk of 3,500 plus state technical university affiliated institutions. Sir has raised 2 very, very pertinent questions pertaining to the theme of this session: technology as a trailblazer and enabler for accentuating all-round excellence in a higher education system. Now, one part Sir raised about the inclusion of higher education, the higher technical education. Can a 45%er or a 50%er student of a class 12 who is a victim of our broken secondary education system can be given some kind of a technical education or higher education per se? So probably Connor has a solution, and maybe Mr. Milton would like to respond to that, the on-demand perspective of it. Or can technology really come across as a real inclusion provider? We had a financial inclusion, a fantastic one, 9 crore plus accounts were just opened in 6 lakhs. So technology as a enabler for inclusion in the higher education space. And secondly, as what Sir said, the silos which have got in the conventional mode, the UPenn model, which Connor said that 20% of the students are just opting for the conventional degrees of it. It's really disrupting, and the way we have seen the management paradigms and other disruptions in other areas higher education is facing through. I would request Milton to answer maybe the first query over there. Can technology provide the real inclusive aspect what Professor Khandale has raised upon?
Yes. But I think we have to recognize, as has been mentioned, technology is an enabler. And it's not, there's no problems, to your point. There are only opportunities. But I do want to, there are tools, and there are open source tools that can, I think, collectively help this. But I was really intrigued by Mr. Batnager, if I pronounce that correctly, sorry, from the NSDC, and we're very honored to be part of your program. The statistic I think you threw out around how many people have phones versus how many people have internet, that gap is huge in India, and I didn't realize it was that significant. So a lot of the technologies we've talked about assume a basic internet connection. And we, from a telecommunications perspective, have to solve that, I think, to provide a lot of the tools to the various students that maybe cannot come to a campus, maybe can't come to an IIT. So I think that is a big problem. I don't necessarily have an answer for that, but and we're raising more, sorry, not a problem, opportunities. We're raising more opportunities than we have answers. But I do want to build, if I may, for a moment, provide a bit of a U.S. context, because actually the discussions are not that different, other than the 900 million to 200 million paradigm. And I want to take it in a slightly different direction at the risk of opening up another Pandora's box, as they say. And I'm a graduate, by the way, of a engineering program. I have a computer science math degree, but actually in Canada as opposed to the United States. I went through a co-op program, which is like an internship, but every 4 months I would go to work. When I graduated, I was more employable. I happen to agree, even as an employer, that our primary role of higher education is not necessarily to place students in schools, or in work environments. And that's maybe heresy, but I happen to agree that producing knowledge and critical thinking is as important, but you have to combine it with skills. And there's a term, as you were talking about the example of the first year student and the second year, and maybe if they left after the second year, they still have critical skills they can bring to a job. The terminology I've heard in the US that's emerged is called stackable skills. And it can come from a variety of different tools. One example is, if I'm trying to produce a network engineer, these are the skills that that individual has to have, and you need to kind of develop your curriculums against that, and you should do it. It's very hard to develop a curriculum. I feel for the task that many of you have for 5 years from now. What are the skill sets that are needed 5 years from now? But I would encourage you, as you're thinking about building what we refer to as stackable skills, that you do not forget liberal arts. There is a war on liberal arts in the United States right now. There's such a focus on building competencies and placement, to your point earlier, that some of the things that I think, the question was posed earlier, or mentioned is, do you remember your professor, your favorite professor from when you were in school? I can tell you it was a liberal arts professor, it was political science, it was the courses I took as electives that I remember. And we find in a lot of employees now in our own company, and again we have 400 employees in India, that some of them lack critical thinking skills. Some of them lack basic skills to be able to sell their ideas. By the way, an entrepreneur, if you look at one of the great drivers of the United States is entrepreneurship, obviously. And you think about the emergence of Silicon Valley, and it was mentioned earlier about Steve Jobs and Bill Gates maybe not having finished their... If you ask, by the way, Bill Gates, what he remembers some of the liberal arts courses that he took in his first year of school. So I think don't lose focus on the development of a well-rounded person, is another way to describe it, but also think about how we can develop stackable skills so that the people are employable, but they're also a better person. That's what I have to add.
I think I am forced to wrap up this session. This is a really fantastic deliberation which just happened. We will carry forward, sir, in the dinner time because we have two more very, very fantastic deliberations, the Shastrarth this evening out here. It has really built up in a very, very grand fashion. I would request Mr. Raj to present over, to thank all the panelists this evening with a ceremonial stole which we have got out here to really express their fantastic, candid views on myriad aspects. And I would request Mr. Raj to present the stole to Mr. Bhatnagar, who is really remind us this evening great of his wisdom. Professor Sanjeev Singh, who has really put up certain really tough questions, and I would request Dr. Moni to accept a stole of thanks from this August forum. And I also request Mr. Raj to present a stole of thanks to Mr. Milton to give his global perspectives. And also as a ceremonial welcome, I would request Mr. Raj to present a stole of welcome to Professor R.K. Khandas, who is a guest of eminence this evening and who has really packed up this entire deliberation, this entire Shastrarth to a really great level. So, we also have the great good fortune to have Mr. G.S. Malik, who is the OSNCC HR with the DRDO. New Delhi, he looks after. I would request Mr. Raj to welcome him and graced us this evening in a very fantastic manner. I will request both our guest of eminence and the chief guest to please come in the middle row so that our next session can see them across and all. Sir, I would request you all, both of you, to please come on the central bay.